5 medical students band together to try to cheat death, only to have their past sins come back and haunt them. The 90s were kicked off with thrills and amazing hair, but it's time to usher in a new era. That's right, it's time to remake Joel Schumacher's Flatliners right. Today is a good day to die, my fellow cinematic architects, so welcome to Remake This Movie Right. We are a member of the Hollywood Outsider Network. Listen to episodes of Remake This Movie Right on Apple Podcasts. Reviews are appreciated. Your podcast app of choice, or just visit the website at remakeThisMovieRight.com. Remake This Movie Right is a show that takes an original film that has an actual remake in the works, figures out exactly what still clicks and what doesn't, maybe throw a little bit of humor at it, and then determine exactly how Hollywood should remake it. So by the end of each episode, we will have a remake ready to roll for Hollywood execs and present it to you in movie trailer form. We are here to tell Hollywood how to remake this movie right. And on this one, we better hurry because it's almost here. So for this episode, we are remaking the 1990 Joel Schumacher film Flatliners, written by Peter Filardi and starring Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon, William Baldwin, and Oliver Platt. Medical students begin to explore the realm of near-death experiences, hoping for insight. Each one has their heart stopped and is then revived for various time limits. They begin having flashes of walking nightmares from their childhood, reflecting sins they committed or had committed against them. The experiences continue to intensify, and they begin to be physically beaten by their visions as they try to go deeper into the death experience to find a cure. I'm your host for this episode. My name is Aaron Peterson, and joining me today, you might remember her from The Birds, Stephen King's Pet Sematary, and Charlie's Angels, Amanda Sink.
Hello, good evening. How's it going?
That was awful pleasant.
Yeah, I try.
It's going very well. I'm still alive.
Yes, you are, alive and kicking with a heartbeat.
And you remember her from Splash and 9 to 5, Miss Courtney Davenport.
Hello, hello. In from my travels
Yay.
all over the country.
Okay, and by the time this episode airs, both of you were recently featured on episode 288, I believe, of the Hollywood Outsider podcast. So everybody be sure to check that out at thehollywoodoutsider.com.
Do it.
Hopefully we didn't break it.
Time will tell. So the Flatliners movie, 1990, not the one that's coming out very, very soon, if it's not already out by the time you hear this. What were your initial thoughts when you saw the movie the first time you saw it? Courtney? Because I'm sure you saw it around the time when it came out.
I did. I'm sure you're not revealing my age while you are saying that.
No,
but,
I assumed you were an infant. You were in the womb and they had cable.
Yes, I was just barely understanding English. My memories of the movie are, first of all, it's a murderer's row of 80s hunks in this movie with Kiefer Sutherland and Mr. Kevin Bacon, who is still extremely handsome. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember the first time in this movie when Kevin Bacon just bursts into that room where all the equipment is, and he's all feathered hair and hotness and just like walking with intention. Of course, that's the old Kevin Bacon I remember. So I think that's what I remembered the most about it. And the story. The story was really interesting. And I do think I was scared the first time I saw it.
Really?
Yeah, because you never know where the visions are going to pop up, and you know, it's just stuff you can't control. So it's not a scared as in this could truly happen, but a scared as in they could pop up anywhere at any time.
I swear to God, this is an honest to God story. I thought when I was watching the movie, like halfway through it, because I saw it in the theater, and I was halfway through it, and I remember thinking, is this like the origin story for Kiefer Sutherland's David from Lost Boys? Like, this is what happens. He dies, comes back as a vampire.
That would be pretty cool.
And then chases down Jason Patrick. Who ironically stole his woman.
Oh my gosh, that's right. And I remember also being fascinated by Julia Roberts' hair. She had the most amazing hair in this movie.
Yeah. Oh, we're going to talk about hair. Hair is a very important factor to what I love about this movie.
80s.
But we're going to talk about. Amanda, you had never seen this until this podcast.
No.
So what are your thoughts on it?
I feel like I say that a lot too sometimes when we're recording these episodes. I really enjoyed it. The trailer for the new one, I'd heard of the movie. I knew of it. I knew it existed from the 90s, but I just never felt the need to go and watch it. And then I was watching the trailer for the new one that's coming out, and it seemed interesting. I liked the concept, and the cast seemed good. But I was like, there's got to be, it's in the 90s. Who doesn't love the 90s era? So it's got to be good from the previous one. So I actually checked out the trailer when we were starting to talk about this for remake, and it looks like it's so much. I don't think that the new one's gonna live up to to the 90s one. But
so you really did like it then.
I really, really did. It's got so much of the Kiefer 80s Lost Boys sort of feel to it that's completely up my alley. Just all of the tone, the atmosphere, the story, the acting, everything is really well done in this movie. I was more impressed with it than I thought I would be, because it seemed like it was going to be very minimal in terms of the story, just because I was going into it kind of comparing it to the new trailer for the 2017 version. And I think that the old one's still just going to blow it out of the water, but you know.
It's got Kiefer Sutherland.
It does, yeah. And Kevin Bacon and Julia Roberts. It's got a great cast, really.
Could have stopped at Kiefer Sutherland, honestly.
I know. He's fantastic. But
Kiefer Sutherland in the 80s is like the proxy for the aggravating, really full of himself, like white kid, I feel.
With a trench coat.
With the trench coat, who's like kind of like a suffering, but he's so annoying and he's so obnoxious at the end of the movie with the whole, oh, you're just riding my coattails. That's just who he was in the 80s, I think.
Exactly. Now you see in the if they would have gone 5 minutes longer, they should have had a clip of David at the end, like after the credits, a stinger.
Yeah,
it would have worked completely.
That's really funny that you bring that up, because now that's all I'm going to picture.
Seriously, that I will never forget. That's what I thought halfway through the movie. I'm like, this is an origin story for David.
Yeah, and his ridiculously dyed hair back in the day, or colored hair, it does not work for Kiefer, but he still looks fantastic.
We're going back to hair. We're coming back to hair, people.
It always goes back to the hair.
I promise you. Please subscribe and review us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever podcast app you use. If you have your own pitch or thoughts on this week's episode, please email them to remakeThisMovieRight@gmail.com. Now here's a clip from the original Flatliners.
Good morning, Manus. How you doing?
Fine.
I've been meaning to ask you something. Are you dating anyone?
Identify.
Costa diaphragmatic recess? It's not offensive if I make conversation, is it? I mean, sometimes it's nice to open up, that's all. Like old Lenny here. He's open.
Identify?
Polaris. Look, I've heard all the rumors and nicknames about you, Rachel. But I'm sure you're a very warm woman. Not the least bit frigid or repressed. Identify.
Your brains.
Good. So you want to come over to my place where we can do some more serious thinking?
Excuse me, Dr. Hurley, I need a word with Dr. Manus.
Sure.
Didn't I already say no to this?
Look, I've already got Steckel and Hurley, 2 of the top GPAs in the school. All I need you to do is handle the injections and the IV.
Forget it, Nelson. I have no interest in watching you kill yourself.
I think you do.
Okay, you guys ready for some trivia?
Ready, set, go.
Oh,
ready.
Wow. Oh, easy killers. All right, second of 5 collaborations between Kiefer Sutherland and director Joel Schumacher, who first collaborated on The Lost Boys. They also worked on 12, Phone Booth, and A Time to Kill. Time to Kill is a great movie, by the way. The lighting in this movie is a significant predictor of what will happen in the scene. A deep orange color is usually a sign of promise or positivity, while blue usually means something bad will happen.
I do like when movies use different color tones to kind of incite different emotions into you and to foreshadow.
Very, very much
especially when they do it well and it's more subtle than it is in your face, which is kind of hard to do, I feel like.
Yeah, it was really obvious in the Julia Roberts scene with her father in the bathroom.
Yeah.
That's when I really noticed it. It's like, here comes the sun. It was like, oh, so yellow.
It was very yellow.
Yeah.
Very, very yellow. During the pre-production period, the actors worked with medical technical advisor Ruth Eckholm, who tutored them on the proper medical procedures for the scenes for the student's flatline on the EKG and the EEG machines, signaling heart and brain death, respectively. They also took advantage of screenwriter Peter Filarti's research of published accounts concerning those who had near-death experiences. Among those people, accident victims, nearly all reported positive experiences of a tunnel leading to a beautiful white light and friendly voices. And in contrast, people who attempted suicide had troubled and emotionally painful near-death experiences. Fascinating.
Sort of, but it also leads me back to...
No, it's fascinating.
There is some psychology studies that were done back in like the 50s or 80s or something like that. And it was all about how, in terms of like hypnosis and stuff, how we have this sort of subconscious internal behavior where we imitate the things that we hear. So if one person is talking about how they had a near-death experience and they saw a tunnel with a white light, then, if somebody already has that kind of concept in their mind, they might think that they're dealing with the same behavior when they experience it too. So I have some hesitation when it comes to that, if they all actually experience that, or if they already had that belief kind of in their brain from previous people talking about it. So
okay, so this is the part where I say Jennifer Lawrence in a bathtub, Jennifer Lawrence in a bathtub, Jennifer Lawrence in a bathtub. So when it happens to me, I get the correct vision according to your
whatever you say.
reference.
We won't argue about Jennifer Lawrence because
long, protracted fantasy. I get where you're going with this.
I will head
a
toward
long
that
shot.
light. That light, I will run to the light, Carol Ann. All right. Interesting quote from producer, last one. Rick Bieber said of this movie, I think this film is going to be very provocative. There's no question that we're dealing with a subject matter that does have religious overtones. From the first moment that we saw the script, we were committed to depicting the story responsibly. Now, that's the question I want to lead off before we get into what we loved and don't loved about the original. Let's start with you, Courtney, because Amanda just went on a whole essay. Do you think the film did it handle death responsibly, or was it just telling a story?
I think it handled it pretty responsibly. I appreciated that the Julia Roberts character worked with dying patients. I don't know if she was working in a hospice. I can't remember exactly what the setting was, but I thought that tied everything in really well with this dance over the line between life and death. And I think the premise is exceptionally interesting. I think we're always fascinated with life and death and not knowing what's on the other side. So it's somewhat of an evergreen topic to me. As long as we never truly know, or we, could truly never know what's on the other side, I think this will always be a fascinating topic for movies and stories.
Yeah, I agree with you with pretty much everything you said. I also like that they didn't try to over glorify death. Like they start to in the beginning, but then they start to realize, okay, maybe trying to kill yourself isn't the best idea. So that it's not to portray death as some fantastic, fascinating type of thing. Like Julia Roberts in the beginning is talking to her patient about how death is, you're going to go to a great place, things are going to be wonderful. And that can kind of, in the wrong mind, can incite something pretty bad if somebody's in that place or they think this is really cool, I would like to try this.
This will be better.
Yeah. So I think that they handled it really well by initially having that outlook and then giving you examples and different things of, no, that's not really what we're aiming for here. And it's not always the best mindset to be along those lines.
Okay. It's both interesting. I think it feels very much just, it's a thriller. I don't think it's trying. I really don't believe it's trying to open the door and say, here, we're going to treat death very responsibly. It very much feels like, let's just examine it a little bit. Let's go step beyond the tunnel and the light. Let's just say, okay, let's take this concept and see where we can go with it. And that's what I feel like they did. I feel like they steered away from a lot of supernatural angles I thought they could have went to and made it more of a straight, very science-y kind of
very
film.
reality based for everything.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Reality is kind of a stretch because I'm sorry, you die for 5 minutes. You are brain dead. I really don't care what kind of magic doctor you have. And he can look like Kevin Bacon. He's not going to save that. But they do enough of it to make it work for me to a degree.
But in terms of reality, these people they think that they're fully experiencing these, but they're actually just kind of doing it to themselves. Like you have the scene where Billy is attacking Nelson in the van, and he thinks he's actually being attacked by, what was it, some sort of
he's
like
psychologically being attacked.
Yes, he's doing it to himself. You have that scene where he cut like a
pickaxe, like a pickaxe or something.
And he's actually putting it into his own ear, but he's having these hallucinations that it's actually happening to him. It's just kind of like a very realistic or very movie serialized sort of schizophrenia is really what it seems like when you think about it. But they're all just they're making it their own reality, even though it's not really.
It's interesting. I can't wait to see what ideas we all came up with for a remake, because this is the one movie that, of all the ones, and we've done quite a few of them, where I think there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. You don't necessarily have to go anywhere near what they did. You can do your own thing. So it's kind of cool. All right, so let's get into the original. What makes this movie so notable? What do you love about it, Amanda?
Well, as I've said, I really enjoy that it's still, even though it's set in the 90s, it still has those late 80s feels. So it's really just nice to see that cast all together on screen. That was a lot of fun. And like, we won't talk about the hair right now, but seriously, the hair is...
Save that. I want the hair. I really want the hair.
We'll leave the hair to you. But I just, the concept of it, I think it was really interesting how they approached it and how they ended it. And they still had some humor here and there, but it wasn't anything that was over the line where it was just like, come on, guys. Like, there's no way this is even in your wildest dreams possible. There was some sort of a reality base and it kept you interested, but it was still far-fetched. So to me, that was interesting that they were able to keep me engaged, but it wasn't in a supernatural element.
Okay. Courtney, anything to add on that or build on that?
No, not specifically, but can I go back for a second to the Kiefer Sutherland scenes when he was getting chased by the kid? I wanted to mention this when we were talking about this before. I actually started laughing out loud at one point when he's in the alley and he's getting beaten up by the kid, because I'm imagining, if you guys are familiar with that comedian Brian Regan, he has this whole bit about walking into a spider web. And I was imagining what other people were seeing when they watched Kiefer Sutherland, maybe from the alley, like he's just shadowboxing and punching everywhere.
I mean, imagine seeing any of those situations as like an outsider. We would just be like, just run the other direction.
I wouldn't have been scared if I was Kiefer, because the kid, especially with the hockey stick, I'm like, that is the better off dead kid. I want my $2. That's all I kept seeing when little Billy popped up. I want my $2. And chasing after him with a hockey stick. There's nobody seen that movie.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
No, I've seen it. Dude, kids are terrifying. Children of the Corn and all that. Man, I would be terrified.
Just kids in general. You could have just stopped there. You don't need references. We get it. They're terrifying. Okay, I want to talk about the hair.
We know.
We're ready.
Everyone except Oliver Platt has amazing hair in this movie. I want a movie just told from the hair's perspective at some point, like the hair, and maybe the hairstylist point of view, maybe just the strands, the individual strand has their own cinematographer. I don't know, but it is glorious. William Baldwin has a glorious mane. Julia Roberts has this fantastic mane. Kevin Bacon, every time he moves, it's like a Revlon commercial.
I know.
Yep, feathering for days. Yep.
Oh, and it's just amazing. He just like stands up and his hair just shimmers in the light. And even Kiefer's, I think Kiefer had cool hair. And because his isn't like as fine and sexy as the Baldwin and the Bacon boy. So he had to pay somebody. He's like, look, I don't have as sexy as hair, but I need my hair to shine like theirs. And they're like, all right, here, we're going to take care of you, Kiefer.
It's only the color that I think is ridiculous, because it's very
his
obviously
hair is blonde.
But he has like, he looks ridiculous.
I hope he's listening and he's like, no, seriously, that's my hair.
I mean, he looks awesome, but he looks ridiculous.
How does he look ridiculous? I thought he looked cool.
It's gelled within an inch of its life, too. It's like standing up, and it's so... It looks like like if you tried to go up to it and thump it with your finger, that it would hurt.
Well, that's 1990. That's 1990.
It would hurt.
And we do need to have an homage to Julia's hair, because it must have been the model for Merida for Brave.
Yeah, I would have
Because, yes, it is flowing and beautiful, but... On the other hand, it is always down in all of the scenes. She's a medical student. She's dissecting bodies. She's handling life or death situations, and the girl cannot get a scrunchie or a banana clip or nothing to hold that mane back.
You know what? That's a great point.
Unrealistic.
Because there's no way that she can even eat with her hair as curly and voluminous as it is and have it in her face.
Is that a word?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm making it a word if it's not, but we'll look it up. It's probably an Urban Dictionary.
I don't know about voluminous. I don't know if that's exactly how it goes, but okay.
Anyway, yes, there is no way that this girl does not have some sort of an 80s scrunchie still on her wrist, because she needs to. Because there is no way that you can keep concentration with that much hair constantly dangling in your face.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yep. Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and I'm with you 100%.
You know what? I'm not, because who cares? Because that hair was gorgeous.
It is really gorgeous, but let's be realistic here.
She was stunning back then.
I'm not saying she's not the exact same.
No. I don't know. There was something about her. Maybe it's because, I don't know. Maybe it's because she was still new and fresh, and you hadn't seen many people like her. And it's just how she performed at that time. She was a lot more innocent. I don't know. There's something about her that is riveting in that era.
In terms of her acting, I feel like I can understand like what her performances look like on screen, but her as like an individual, she looks like she hasn't really aged. Like I need to know what her secrets
I'm
are.
talking like the way she performs, because she performs more maturely. She's obviously older.
Did you catch Baldwin negging her at the beginning of the movie?
Oh, goodness.
No, which part was that? Where was he negging?
It was right in the beginning. I think it's one of the first scenes we ever meet Baldwin. He says something like, "Oh, you're not like what I hear about you. You're not frigid or repressed at all."
And secretly,
made me laugh.
She wanted to make out with him. That's just how it works.
So terrible.
No, she gets hit on by almost everybody in the movie. And you see, I was actually really proud of this movie because this is back in, I think you said 1990. You see the aggravation on her face. Like, I'm just here to learn and be a student and participate in this crazy experiment. I'm not here for you hitting on me right now.
It was awkward. It got really awkward after a while. I mean, I get it. But at some point, like in 2017, I think somebody's filing a sexual harassment claim. Even if they have a secret little club, somebody should be filing a claim against someone because it was just getting uncomfortable. I'm like, let her be, man. Especially Kiefer. He just went off the deep end.
He lost his mind.
Yeah, I'm just going to let Kevin Bacon die because I'm jealous. What the hell is up with that?
He was so close to letting her die just because he was jealous.
Hold that. That'll be part of the other side. Anything else that you love about the original? All right.
What about you?
Well, each actor I thought was really on the cusp of their future career. I thought that was pretty fantastic. For better or worse, Julia Roberts was also getting ready to dump Kiefer for Jason Patrick. But there are some prime actors in the prime time of their careers, which I think is really interesting. I mean,
did somebody give that memo to Oliver Platt? Because
I was just saying, Oliver Platt, that's where he went. He peaked. He was supporting guy. And William Baldwin, this is probably about as good as he got. This is the prime of their career, except for maybe
Kiefer.
Well, Julia Roberts actually went up a little bit after this, too. Kevin Bacon's always maintained he's one of those actors, like, he's always in demand. He's always a consistent working actor. He's done leading. He's done supporting. He'll take anything.
He's like Chuck Norris. He'll always be recognized.
He is way better than Chuck Norris. And his hair is 10 times as sexy.
His hair is, I cannot get over how luscious it looks. And that's the word I'm going with, is luscious. Mm-hmm. I want those locks on my head.
It naturally falls that
I think it does, too. There is no way that anybody can try.
We're going to remake that hair right.
It's already right. Oh, man. I just don't understand how hair can be so perfect.
It's just a great collective of great talent at one time. And Joel Schumacher wasn't a joke at this moment. This is before Batman and Robin. So it was before his name took a real hit. It's fascinating to me. I mean, it's just a fascinating collection of talent. So I love that. And I also really love William Baldwin's character, Joe, who, he secretly captures these women that he's having sex with and does it all secretly. And I guess this is like an origin story for Sliver in many ways. But yeah, I just liked how that came back to haunt him because it's a horrible thing to do. And he obviously enjoys it a little too much when he's smiling at the camera and whatnot. So I liked his penance for that. And we already talked about the concept, so I don't have that. So, okay, what doesn't work for you? Courtney, what doesn't work for you?
So I need to talk about the scene at Winnie's house with Kevin Bacon because that was crazy. So firstly, you don't leave your boy who is clearly having a psychotic episode, who's maybe delusional and self-harming at best or at worst, has a weird demon child following him. You don't leave him alone in the car outside. That was the wrong move. Mm-hmm. And then inside the car, meanwhile, Kiefer is rolling up the window because apparently the physics of weird demon child following you is if you enclose yourself in a small space, surely you'll be safe. Can somebody explain this to me? Like the demon child is going to be bound by regular space and physics?
In his defense,
don't understand.
I think he was losing his mind, so he wasn't really thinking too clearly. He's just like, Billy's out there. I don't want him in here. That's what happened.
Well, obviously he wasn't thinking clearly because one of my favorite parts of this whole scene is Kiefer rolls up the window and then starts screaming for help.
Yeah.
Let me take you back. He rolls up the window, enclosing himself, and then is screaming for help. You roll down the window and scream for help to the people who were in the house who could hear you. Oh, my goodness.
This is why he died and became a vampire.
And then Kevin Bacon, this is his vehicle. He doesn't remember that there's an open flap at the back of the vehicle that he doesn't think about checking when the door's locked. This is your car. You should know that in the back, it's all open, just some material flying around. That's all you have to close it. And you could have just lifted that up like a sheet.
These are traumatic times, people. Come on, it's stressful.
That's why you should know the entrances. You don't go to the other door that's obviously going to be locked too. Come on.
It's stressful.
Meanwhile, in the house, Kevin Bacon is making his apologies and connecting with Winnie. And then the husband comes around and he's like, oh, don't worry. My friend's just having a crazy psychotic episode in the car. Nothing to see here. We'll get out of your hair in a moment. Oh, geez.
That was great. I did like that, how his character was played. Kevin Bacon's character I loved in this movie. He was just such a good guy, like throughout. He was the glue that held everything together. And I thought he was going to be, because I hadn't seen it since it came out, honestly. And I couldn't remember how his character played out. I thought it was more of a supporting role. And he ends up being the co-lead, I would say. But my biggest problem with the character arcs are how just crazy jealous Kiefer Sutherland gets. I mean, that's why I'm coming back to that, because that was just weirdly uncomfortable, how quickly he fell under this. I mean, I understood the God complex stuff. If it would have been jealous of his talent, I could have totally understand that, because he's very petty about, it's my idea. You know, I came up with this. You guys are just riding my coattails. I understood all that stuff because that's just Dr. God complex. But man, the whole thing with him just freaking out and almost willing to kill Kevin Bacon. I'm just joking. Well, not really. And then the same thing with Julia Roberts. And it's just like, man, if I were your friends, I would kill you, honestly, and just leave you.
Yeah, we wouldn't be rushing back to save you at the very end.
Yeah, just whoops.
Yeah, he is unbearably obnoxious to all those people.
Yeah, I mean, how do you stay with friends? How do you keep friends that way? That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, the other thing is, too, that I noticed in the beginning, and I actually rewound while I was watching it on my phone, so I slid backwards. But I recapped the part in the beginning. It's like 23 minutes in or something. And for his oxygen mask, this is when Kiefer's going under. And they're trying to revive him and get him back. And they give him this oxygen mask. And when the first glance, it's still hooked up to the tube. Mm-hmm. And then when it goes to the next cutscene, there's nothing. It is just a piece of plastic sitting over his nose. And he's somehow coming back to life and breathing fine with this oxygen mask that has no oxygen working with it. And I can't believe
I didn't notice that. Ah.
Did you verify this?
I checked it twice. It's at like 20. I want to say it's 23 minutes.
I think this proves my vampire theory. Really. I mean, it cements the whole concept. It's a vampire.
You'll see in the first part, it looks like the tube is kind of like over Julia Roberts' arm towards the top. And then the next scene, or the next cut, it's just disappeared. And she has her hand placed over the mask just so you kind of feel like you don't notice where the tube is. But it's non-existent.
She's like, we don't have a tube, guys. Yeah. How do we cover this one up?
Oh, she just pulls it off. And I'm like, that's not how oxygen works, man. That's not how you keep somebody alive.
It's a metaphor.
I don't know how they got all that equipment in that room to begin with, because surely no one's missing all of that equipment from the medical school. That was another one of my issues, but they had their arms full, Amanda. They couldn't carry one more tube. It just did not have any more space.
That speaks to my other issue with it was, why do they need to be in this place? Couldn't they find like a private room or rent a warehouse or do something that doesn't require all kinds of pull the shades down, be really quiet, it's all secret, and da-da-da-da. Like, that just felt like an added aspect that didn't need to be there. I mean, your med school students, surely somebody's got some room somewhere they could use. I didn't understand.
They're all poor. They have no money until afterwards.
Right, they're all dirt poor.
You know, a lot of campuses will let you come on late after hours and stuff when most people are gone. Why weren't they just there using one of the rooms, which would be close by if they needed additional equipment and wouldn't be as weird if they were taking it off the campus, where if they're just on the campus, they're just sliding it down the hallway. You know, there are some logistical questions here that we have.
Wait. I know why. Because then the thunderstorm wouldn't look as cool.
Oh.
This is true. That's
yeah.
Good.
Because they are going to do this where they're depending on electricity in a thunderstorm. Nothing will happen. I'm sure the power will sustain.
I would probably have a backup generator if I knew I was going to die.
Yeah, you would think.
Even though, here's a funny thing. I don't think defibrillators can bring you back if you've legitimately flatlined. I don't think it works. I think you're actually not supposed to do that, if I remember correctly. I think if you're actually dead, you're not supposed to use defibrillators. But I could be wrong. I am not a medical student.
If they're breathing, I believe, is when you're not supposed to use.
I think it's the other way around.
defibrillator.
I think it's when they aren't.
Let's look.
Yeah, no, it's not. Because
I took CPR training, so I'm going to be really disappointed if I don't know that.
I will tell you, a defibrillator does not work on bare skin, or it only works on bare skin. It doesn't
Yeah.
work over clothes, people. So
Did they
you
do
gotta
it over clothes?
They had undergarments because they got to keep Julia Roberts looking covered.
I was just going to say, you're just looking for a reason for her to take that bra off. I know it.
It's to save her life, Courtney. Really.
It's to save her life.
You should look deep into her eyes and, twirl a piece of her hair around your finger and tell her that and see what she says.
Well, my biggest problem with the actual movie was the end. I thought the end was very weak. I didn't like how they wrapped it up. I felt like it was, we got all these ideas, we went all these places, and I have no idea how to wrap this up. So he's going to have to die again, and basically switch places with Billy. Okay.
Agreed.
No, you agree with me?
Okay. Totally agree. I did not care for the ending at all. I thought it was really abrupt and strange. And everybody's okay now. And haven't we all learned a lesson?
I really did. There's one particular spot towards the end of the movie, though, that I really enjoyed, which is when they're pretty much all thinking he's dead. He's gone, whatever. And Kevin Bacon is yelling, and he's yelling to God, please, like he's offering up all of he's praying to him, essentially, like, don't let this be it. And he's like, it can't, he says something like, it can't end like this or something like that. And Oliver Platt's like, apparently not. Like, he's just making some sarcastic joke in rebuttal to Kevin Bacon praying to God. And I actually started laughing in that scene. I thought it was really funny. And I liked how Kevin Bacon went super psycho and still decided to save him, which reiterates how good of a person he is. That even though, obviously, Kiefer Sutherland Nelson didn't really give a crap if he died, he still wanted to make sure that he lived and he didn't deserve to die. And that just furthers the point that he's such a good person. So while I think that there was weakness in Kiefer's like ending dream sequence and how he dealt with that, I think that the other reality portions were handled pretty well in terms of the characters. Mm-hmm. So I get the dream, though. That was like, what are we doing here? Why is this happening?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I like that you have a character who, he was obviously a bully as a kid. Mm-hmm. And then they keep saying he paid his dues. I'm like, well, not really, because he's kind of bullying them now. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he's still kind of a bully in some aspects. And I like that was there, and I also didn't like that was there, because I'm like, well, maybe he didn't really pay his dues. Maybe he's just a jackass. Maybe it is time for him to go. Bye.
They also don't have some sort of like ending follow-up where they've concluded, I don't know, just some sort of, have they actually changed? Have they done anything differently?
No, like Courtney said, they basically, okay, we learned a lesson. We're all good now.
Right. And that's...
No harmful side effects from being dead for 5 or 6 minutes. It's just ludicrous.
The hallucinations were a pretty serious side effect, but they did just seriously dissipate after they made their amends and apology and atonement.
Okay.
And do we truly know that works long term? I'm curious to know.
And there's physical repercussions when you die. You don't just come back and you're like, well, let's just shake it off.
Well, they didn't touch on any of that. They didn't touch on that because everybody came back fine. And let me tell you, he would have been like, when he came back. That's what he would have sounded like. He wouldn't be saying whole words like...
They would have to be in ICU for weeks.
He wouldn't have a cool catchphrase like, today was not a good day to die.
And I'm going to perfectly whisper it in your ear so you can understand exactly what I'm saying.
I'm going to take a long nap. That's what I'm going to do because I'm super tired. I just was dead.
Twice.
Yeah, him reiterating that line super annoyed me at the end.
So there's pluses and minuses here. So the question is, should this movie even be remade or should it be placed in don't touch status, Courtney?
Well, I mean, it's cheating a little bit, but I've seen the trailers for the new one and I'm really excited about it. So yes, I do believe it would be good to remake it. I'm behind it.
I also agree with that. Like I said, I think that the new movie looks really good. So I have kind of that bias already that, hey, maybe it could be better, but I really doubt that the new cast will be able to supersede the previous one. But maybe we can do it.
Maybe. I like how you both are working for the studio, apparently. That's good deal. You know what? The new trailer for the new one looks really good. You guys should check that out when it comes out.
YouTube.com.
September 29th. All right. Well, now we're going to hear another clip from the original Flatliners.
How'd it happen?
Playing hockey. Look, about last night.
It's okay.
Never show Labratio.
You know, this really isn't like him at all.
It's just his way of trying to stop me won't work. I'm ready.
I don't think it is at all a good idea to do this without David.
We don't need Dave.
Can you do this?
Can you trust me?
No, but let's do it anyway.
Nitrous on.
See you soon.
How long she been under?
120.
We're bringing her back. No, we're not.
Put that blanket to warm. Body temp? 86
Wait a
degrees.
second. She hasn't been under long enough.
Just do it, Joe.
Joe, we said 425.
Just do it!
Don't expect any hugs and kisses for this.
Okay, so here's what we know about the intended remake, the one that comes out on September 29th in theaters. If you listen to this after that, it's already been in theaters. Maybe it was a hit, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. The remake is said to be more of a sequel, but it sounds like a straight up remake to me, honestly. But here's what it is. In the new Flatliners, 5 medical students obsessed by the mystery of what lies beyond the confines of life embark on a daring and dangerous experiment by stopping their hearts for short periods of time, each triggering a near-death experience, giving them a first-hand account of the afterlife. But as their experiments become increasingly dangerous, they are each haunted by the sins of their past, brought on by the paranormal consequences of trespassing to the other side. This time it stars Ellen Page, Nina Dobrev, Diego Luna, and James Norton. I highly recommend no one looks any further at IMDb. That's all I'm going to say.
Were there some spoilers in there?
There are. So stay away from them. Stay away from them. I'm warning
poor
people.
thing.
I'm warning people. Okay, so since this movie is getting a remake, now that's literally all I know about the movie. I haven't looked any further into it. I have seen one trailer. It looks pretty much like the original to me. But since it's getting a remake and as fans, we always think we know the best way to do it. How should Hollywood remake it? So all selections are settled by a best of 3 vote, with each host receiving 1 cut per episode, where if they're extremely passionate about an idea, they just yell cut, and we have to go their way. We're each going to give our little pitch, and then we'll decide which way we should go. Who wants to go first? Courtney, you had an idea you're really excited about, so why don't you start? What's your idea for a new Flatliners?
All right, I will start. I've pretty much have the movie all mapped out, so get comfortable. I have eliminated the Oliver Platt character just because there were too many people to fuss with, and I thought he contributed the least after all, he was the one who didn't go under at all. Mm-hmm. And like the remake, I've changed the Kiefer Sutherland character to a lady. So his name in the movie is Nelson, so I just made her name Natalie. I'm going to refer to her as Natalie. So she's an overachiever, and she's in medical school, and she's a little socially awkward. No one really likes her, but maybe in this little group of friends, she's saved their butts a couple times in group projects, and she helps them study. So she's in a study group with Joe and Rachel and David. Those are all the original character names. Mm-hmm. She knew David in college, maybe before medical school, and has kind of carried him and helped him out a lot of times. So David spends a lot of time convincing the other members of the group to just be cool with Natalie. She's like the Annie of the group, if you've ever watched Community. She's weird and she's aggravating, but just be cool. So Natalie comes up with the idea to try the flatline experiment, and she ropes the gang in. She goes first, just like the original. She goes under for 1 minute, and she sees mountains and greenery and a purple backpack with a unicorn keychain on it. And that's all we know about so far, because she only went under for a minute. Joe, who's basically the Baldwin character, goes next, and I've twisted him a little bit to where he's not out there with a bunch of women. You just see one woman who maybe you think is his mom, who's very tender with him, but then you see his mom maybe call him later, and you realize that woman wasn't his mother. And you find out that it was a teacher in Sunday school or somebody that he had an affair with when he was younger. And he got her fired because he was really upset when they were discovered. And so that's why she's upset with him. So she shows up all over the place. Maybe he's sitting at a picnic table outside talking to someone, and the other person at the picnic table turns around and it's her. Or he sees her on a movie screen, kind of like in the original with all the other women. She basically starts showing up in his life. Also, I had the really sick idea of having him have a wet dream and having it go terribly wrong.
Of course you did.
Which could be very painful. Meanwhile, Natalie, the original, is seeing the backpack and the keychain everywhere in weird places. So that's odd. She also lives upstairs somewhere, and something wet and swampy is sort of crawling up the stairs to her. She keeps getting scrapes on her body. She's going to fight with a younger girl, kind of like Kiefer fought with the little boy. And in some scenes, maybe we see water, like drips of water on the floor that lead up to a certain point and then stop with no source and no reason. They just will stop abruptly. Then the Kevin Bacon character goes under, who is David. He wakes up and is sort of like the original, where he's very cryptic about what he sees. He kind of brushes this off. He's like, no, I really didn't see much. Yeah, it really wasn't anything. I didn't have the same experiences that you guys did. Now, this is where this is important. So later, Natalie comes over to David's place, and she's pacing and she's upset because she's got scratches and stuff all over her. She's dealing with the little girl, and she tells him about what's happening. He tries to calm her down. Then she sees pictures of her and David together in his room. And she's saying, I can't believe you still have these pictures, because they were college friends, maybe up there at a party. And you see a photograph of her and her eyes are closed and she's laughing. She's got a Solo cup in her lap. And he says, of course I still have these pictures. That was the best night of high school. Do you remember you laid across my lap and you sang that old REO Speedwagon song to me and you wouldn't let me get up until it was done, or something cute and romantic like that. And he looks at her lovingly, and you kind of understand that he's actually in love with her. And she says, no, I don't really remember much from that night. And then they go on, and you see a little bit of a flashback from him where he's looking at her lovingly, and he kind of brushes the hair away from her face. And basically you understand that he's in love. And he says, well, you need to get it together, because we've all got to get together tonight at 9:00, because it's Rachel's turn to go under. So the next thing we expect to see is for Rachel to go under. This would have been in the original movie when it was Julia Roberts' turn. Mm-hmm. But twist. Natalie rushes to wherever they have all the equipment, because she can't take getting these visions anymore. So she bursts into the lab early, and she starts setting everything up like Kiefer did to go ahead and do this herself. She writes a letter to the team that says, I'm sorry for everything. I pushed too hard. If it's my time, I'm ready to go. Love, Natalie. And so she sets herself up to flatline. She calls David and she says, I'm going under, and I don't care if I die. I'm ready to die. So she actually wants to die. And he's trying to talk her out of it. You're crazy. Don't do this. Nobody's with you. What are you doing? And she says, I'm leaving it up to fate, and I'm ready to die if that's what happens. I can't take this anymore. The memories. And then he says something to her like, Natalie, we can talk about this. That night at the party, I realize now that, and she hangs up on him. And so he rushes to her and he calls everybody together, and they come and they try to save her, but she actually dies. I had to have somebody die in my version.
I like it.
She dies. So, but when you're seeing her final vision, you realize that she feels that all of her success that's brought her to this point is based on the fact that when she was in the mountains, which is what she saw when she went under, that backpack and the unicorn keychain or whatever that she's seeing everywhere, she actually pushed her rival off the side of that mountain and killed her.
Oh, I like it.
So, and this little girl, I have this vision of her grabbing something as she was falling off the side of the mountain, and her fingernails scraping down the rocks. And so that's why Natalie has always got scrapes all over her. And she lands in the water. And so that's why in these weird places, Natalie's seeing all this water in trails. So nobody ever knew this. Natalie's the one to push her. And so hence in the note, when she says, I pushed too hard, that's what she actually means. So the team bursts in. I know this is really long. I'm so sorry.
It's very clever. I like it.
The team bursts in and discovers her, and they try to save her, but she dies, like I said. The team cleans everything up. I don't know. Maybe they, put drugs around her or something, but they basically make it look like she killed herself, and they leave that note, and it looks like a suicide note to everybody else. So then this is how I'm going to wrap the fact that nothing is really resolved in the original. Months later, we see the rest of the team, and they're at graduation. And Joe, the Baldwin character, says, hey, I wound up visiting my Sunday school teacher and apologizing to her. I feel like I ruined her life. And she said that it was really tough, but, when she got fired, she moved out of state and she met her husband. She has a new life and a family. So it actually wound up being the best thing that ever happened to her. And I've come to peace with her. And Rachel then jokes, well, I'm going to haunt all of you because you never let me go under at all. And then Joe who, remember, we discover was in love with Natalie. He goes to leave the ceremony alone, and the gang invites him out, but he declines, and he seems kind of melancholy, and he says he's going to do a long road trip to figure out what's next, and it's just obvious that he's so sad about Natalie. And he makes vague promises to keep in touch. But the team kind of goes away, and they're worried about him, and he gets in his car, and he sits there for a minute, and he starts the car, and you start hearing the REO Speedwagon song that he talked about when he was with Natalie. And all of a sudden, Natalie sits up in his back seat. And
shit.
Her shirt is open, and maybe the bra is open. And you realize in that moment that it is not that he was in love with Natalie. It's that Natalie passed out and she was drunk, and he took advantage of her at that party.
Oh, so now he's haunted.
So he has felt guilty all this time. And when he was on the phone with her, when he last spoke to her, and he said, Natalie, I've been trying to talk to you. Do you remember that party? And she hung up on him. That's what you figure out at the end. Twist! He was not in love with her. He feels guilty about taking advantage of her at that party. And she goes on to haunt him forever. End of movie.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
That was so long. I'm so sorry, but I had to get it all out. I wrote this over my hour-and-a-half plane ride today.
That's intense. Yeah.
It was long, but it was actually very detailed and clever. I actually really like it.
I like it. That's one. Amanda, what do you got?
So mine is a little different, and it's definitely not as detailed.
Well, mine's completely different, so.
Yeah. So mine is actually going to take Rachel and Nelson, and they're going to be in a relationship together. He's returning from being as out deployed as a combat medic, and she's in school to be a psychologist. She's going for her master's, so they're a little bit more aged up. And she's been having nightmares lately and knows that something happened to her in her past, but she's not really sure what happened. And so she's talking with some of her peers, which are the same cast members that we've talked about that were in the original. So you're going to still have Joe Hurley, you're still going to have Dave, you're still going to have Randy. And she's talking with them, and they actually tell her, maybe they're eating lunch or something, and they start telling her about this overseas study where someone actually died, came back to life, and was able to recall everything from their birth. So they're getting all of these memories kind of flooding in as they're going, but they're realistic memories. They're not hallucinations or anything like that. She decides that that's what she wants to do because she wants to understand what happened to her. So she starts talking to her boyfriend Nelson about this. He agrees that he will only, and I don't want to say allow her to do it, but he's very protective and cares about her. Obviously doesn't want her to actually die. So he agrees to it and says, I'm there. I won't fight you on this as long as I can actually be there to help, because he's a combat medic. So he understands this. She's just going for psychology. So she's gotten her, bachelor's in psychology and whatnot, but she's not an actual doctor. So he wants to make sure that there's more than just one other person who knows what they're doing. And so after she goes through with hers, she's the first person to go through with it. She figures out the tragedy that happened to her, and she's actually able to communicate with the dead, and she finds that out. So she comes back and she's telling, everybody else that she was able to speak with somebody who was dead that she knew, family member or whatnot. And Nelson is the one who wants to go next. Now he's starting to kind of because he has PTSD from being at war. And he wants to go under because he wants to know if his friends that he couldn't save forgive him. And so he goes under, and he sort of gets the answers that he wants in some respect, but he also doesn't accept them. And he thinks that it's just his PTSD and he's just hallucinating. So he doesn't believe he's actually been able to speak with them. And then Randy, who is still kind of almost useless. I don't want to say useless, but he's really timid. He's nerdy. And he doesn't ever go under, or I'm sorry, he does go under just to try to show up the others. He just wants to try to fit in, and he wants to try to be as cool and macho as Rachel and Nelson have been. And then Hurley, who lost his mother at a young age, goes under because he wants to talk to her. So after Rachel said that she's been able to communicate, Nelson said that he's been able to communicate, Hurley kind of gets up the courage, doesn't tell them why, he just says, I need to do this, I need to talk to her. And then Dave is actually the one who never goes under. He is the only other medic, so he's the one who is required. They obviously need him other than Nelson. There has to be a couple of people who know what they're doing. So that's his necessity. So I want them to kind of negate out the whole need for atonement for sins and sort of that sort of thing, but there's still that thriller aspect of because you don't get to know what all happened to Rachel right at the beginning. You kind of get those pieces as it goes on, and then you have to deal with the almost psychotic episodes of Nelson with his PTSD and him trying to understand, am I actually talking to these people? Am I actually understanding this? Or is this just more hallucinations? Because part of PTSD is that you experience those hallucinations. So he has a hard time differentiating between reality and what he thinks he's seeing. So all of those stories just kind of tie together, and I do want someone to die. I couldn't figure out who I wanted to die in the story. I had a really hard time figuring out who would be best. But I really like Courtney's idea of having the nails, the scrapes, and that's why the character has scrapes all over them. So that's kind of where mine is. Mine is a little bit more focused on their not internal demons of sins, but just the questions they were never able to get answers to. And I think all of us would have somebody that we would want to communicate to, that's passed away. And so that internal drive it's not about, well, this is a really cool idea and I'm a macho man and I want to do it. There's an actual drive to get answers. And so that's what keeps them going even after somebody dies. So that's my idea.
All right.
I think the girl needs to die. I'm feeling ruthless.
You just want the lady gone.
No, I'm just been watching too much Game of Thrones. I'm feeling ruthless.
I guess.
All right, Cersei.
Well, my pitch is going completely, similar, but in a completely different direction. So I want to remake it, but with completely different consequences. These guys, I don't want med students. I want doctors. These are already established doctors. They're in their late 30s. I mean, they are established doctors, maybe even early 40s. They're doctors with dead-end practices. They're very smart, but they're very bored. They're tired of just doing what they're doing. And Nelson, I'm going to use the same characters' names. Nelson has come up with an idea to test death and see what's beyond, to see is there anything after. And the reason that he does this is because he lost his son in a car accident. And he wants to know if there is anything out there. He wants to know if his son is out there. And Rachel is his ex-wife and also a doctor. And she agrees to help him for obvious reasons because she wants the same thing. The death of their son has caused them to drift apart, obviously, but they both have the same goal of, I want to see if our son is somewhere better because it's haunting them. So then you have Joe, Hurley, Randy, and the top-notch, level-headed doctor in David all there. So when Nelson goes under at first, it's very simple, fields, white light, a tunnel, however you want to phrase it. And just as they pull him out, he sees his son. He sees him. But he also sees something right next to him that he can't make out. So when Nelson comes out, he becomes a little panicked and he won't explain why. The other doctors are not elated. They're paranoid that he came back out wrong. Like maybe he was under too long. What was the deal? I mean, he's not seeming right. He's seeming a little shaken. So the next day he finally tells Rachel what he saw and she decides she has to go under. She has to. She goes longer. She's like, I want to go longer. I want to see if I can find him. She only tells Nelson this. She just tells the other guys that she just wants to go longer than Nelson. They think it's more of a competition where really it's because she wants to see if she can find their son and see the same thing. She goes a bit longer and does find their son. She finds him and sees that a very ominous, hard to make out figure is holding on to her son, but she can't quite understand.
Oh man, I'm so interested in this.
So she reaches out to the figure and grabs him and finds the figure to be almost liquidy on her hands. And then she's ripped back to life. She's brought back to life. And as soon as she looks down and notices her hands look exactly like they did in her vision. They're all liquidy. They're moist. They're wet. Obviously, she touched something. So then both her and Nelson start to begin feeling like they're being terrorized by something. They start, little odds and ends are happening. They're seeing little things around the house where they go, everything else. But instead of telling the other doctors, they demand to go even longer, which the other doctors refuse because they don't want them to go under again. They want to go under. They want to test this theory out themselves and see what's there. But then they start to become terrorized by something. And they don't understand what is going on. Accidents occur and things seem very karmic. So they have to explain what's going on, which they finally do to the guys. And then Rachel agrees to die yet again. And when she does, she sees the figure again holding her son. And she learns this time that when she comes back to life, the being comes into our world with her. And when she dies, she pulls him back out, as he is now attached to her because she's the only one that grabbed him.
Mm-hmm.
So, or it, I should say it, because you never, in my vision, you would never see what it is specifically.
Just kind of like a silhouette.
Yeah, just basically just a dark, and it's not a monster, it's not a thing, we don't know. It's whatever the audience wants it to be, is kind of what my goal is. And so, and when she returns to the living, she tells the others, that, again, who refuse to believe it, but of course, then they start to piece together that they're being terrorized because she brings this thing out, and when it came out, initially, those are the people that it kind of latched onto, because when it came into our world, those are the people that were right there. Mm-hmm. So Nelson tells David that he has a plan, but it involves both he and Rachel going at the same time. So they all agree, and Nelson and Rachel, they die at the same time. They find each other. They're obviously going for a much longer period of time. They find each other, and then they find their son. And it becomes painfully obvious that Rachel is being pulled back to life, and at that moment, Nelson grabs onto both the being and his son and holds them firm. Rachel is brought back to life while Nelson remains, and we last see him holding on to the being as well as the son standing by him as she is ripped out. And David, back in the real world, refuses to bring him back because that's what Nelson wanted. And Nelson sacrificed himself to save everybody else.
Aww.
That's my movie.
That's a cool story. I really like that there's some horror elements in it. I think it's kind of interesting in that you don't really ever know what it is.
Yeah, and I was going to say it sounds a little bit like Poltergeist, and I like that, with the going over to the other side to interact with a mystery being to pull out your loved one.
Well, I think we got three good movies, is what I think. Yeah. So
3 Flatliners? No, I'm just kidding.
Let's just make a trilogy. Let's do that.
There we go.
So what do we want to do, guys? What direction do we want to go? Anybody want to change their vote, or anybody want to find a way to combine their votes or their pitches?
Well, I feel like there's a lot of really good elements in terms of, like I said, I really like the horror theme where you're able to reach into this other reality, and it also comes back into your own reality. But I also like Courtney's story where this girl is very haunting. I kind of really like revenge stories, like a lot. I like how she's mapped out the details in terms of the scrapes and that pushing the kid off and all of that, and how it relates to what she keeps experiencing. I think that's really interesting.
I agree, Courtney. I like Courtney's idea. Probably the best of the 3. But I would like to incorporate other ideas. So that the other people that go under, maybe one would have the PTSD that you talked about, that aspect of it. And then another one would be just a father or mother who lost their child and would see their child with an ominous figure. Maybe there is no resolution, because maybe that's just the point of death. That for them, there is no resolution. They just see that there's a figure holding onto their boy, and you never know who that figure is going to be or what that figure is going to be. And I think that would make for because that would, well, Courtney, you tell me, I mean, you mapped out your story. I think those could fit in your story. Could they or couldn't they?
Yeah, I agree. I think we could switch out the Baldwin character for some of your characters, Aaron. And we certainly could age them up like you have it, to where they are established doctors instead of medical students. That would not be an issue at all. And I do love the husband and wife, or husband and ex-wife going over together as well. Those are all really great plot points.
Well, we just make a magnum opus, I guess, and you can combine those. So if you can merge them with your story. I think we all agree we're going with your basic story. So can those fit in that story, do you think? I know the PTSD can, because you can just have one character that has that as an issue and is dealing with it. So that would fit, I think, rather firmly.
Yeah, we could replace, like I said, the Baldwin character with the PTSD, and let's just write a whole different movie with your entire script, or we could make this like the Black Mirror of Flatliners and just do several different versions.
There you go.
Yeah, that would be amazing too.
I guess my version wouldn't really work in your version. It's kind of like a different story. It's the only one I think that has a little bit more supernatural tinge.
I do super love your story, though. I got to give you credit for that. It's pretty good.
Well, Flatliners 2. Hopefully that'll happen after you guys get done. So there we go. We got yours combined. So we got a movie. We got a movie. And we do have your PTSD character in there. Now the question becomes, who's going to direct it?
I feel like it could still work for this, but I think Catherine Bigelow would be a good choice.
Didn't you mention that her in the last episode?
I don't know. I really
She
like
sure
her,
did.
so possibly.
You really like Catherine Bigelow.
I really do. But mine had a lot more with the PTSD, and I know how well she does she's able to master both the fast-paced action and also the eerie slow motion, and she's really good with like the use of sound. And so she just came to mind when I was thinking about this combat medic, because you're obviously going to have some sort of flashback with the PTSD.
Oh, gotcha.
And then so that's kind of where my mind was at with her. But I think she's a fantastic director. So,
what was your idea, Courtney?
I had Guillermo del Toro because I wanted
you wanted dark.
Well,
and gothic.
yeah, I wanted the
Gothic Flatliners
sequences. Yeah, I wanted the sequences where they are flatlined to be very weird and very haunting and very scary.
I had David Fincher.
Ooh.
That's who I had. I think he fits either one, honestly.
I love David Fincher. I think that's my vote.
I'm super on board for David Fincher.
Sweet, I got something in this movie. All right.
Hey, I still think we could incorporate your idea.
I really don't think it would fit with her story. It kind of like, it would be why the hell are there ghosty things in this movie about this evil sumbitch that...
Well, not even necessarily. We could still have one of the people who lost a child reach out, like see and feel like they're reaching out to their child, and there's something else there, whether that's just another figure, like a family figure, or if it is something a little bit more dark and evil, you just never really get a resolution. I don't see why that couldn't fit, because you're not bringing it back into the reality if there's no resolution. So it really could fit in there.
Hey, we'll let Hollywood make that call. Make that call. So any actors that you had in mind for any of these characters? Courtney, you can go. I mean, most of your story is the one we're going with. So who did you have in mind for your leads?
Well, I looked up actors who would be around the age of medical students. So I picked Anna Kendrick for Natalie. I really like her. I think she has a lot of range. I think her face is very expressive, and I think she would do a really good job. I don't think I've seen her in anything scary before, which would be challenging and interesting for her.
I would say in The Accountant, she had to wear those hats. So I mean, she has it, and she's very multi-talented. So
I had, I think I might switch one because I think the soldier with PTSD probably needs to be Aaron Taylor Johnson. He'd make a really good one.
Garfield for that one for PTSD soldier.
Who, Andrew Garfield?
I have Andrew Garfield for another choice here. I have him as my original David. Either one would be good.
I'll tell you what, it's her PTSD soldier. I'll second the Garfield. So if that's what she wants for PTSD, sure.
I just think that.
And I'll second Aaron Taylor Johnson for David.
Just swap
that
them
way
around.
they're all in there.
And then finally, for my Rachel, as an homage to the original, I picked Emma Roberts. Because she's related to Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Maybe some of that hair DNA might get in. Maybe.
No, she doesn't have the same kind of hair. She really doesn't. She's
got
more
the short end of the genetic stick.
She's got her dad's hair. Eric Roberts.
I'm going to give a special mention to who I had originally picked for Rachel, though, because I think that she could really fulfill the role, and the people that have seen her in the shows that she's been in will probably agree. But Phoebe Tonkin, who is primarily from the originals, which is the Vampire Diaries spinoff.
Seen it.
It's a much, much darker version of Vampire Diaries. Much more. It's more adult than Vampire Diaries is more CW. This one is a little bit more.
Aren't they both on CW?
They are, but Vampire Diaries
how much more CW can a CW show get?
But she handles a lot of the darker tones really well. And she has the range of being able to be a dramatic actress and be able to be scared and also be very strong. So shout out to her. Sorry you can't make the cut, lady.
I am not familiar with her either.
I think
never
if you
watched
guys
that
see
show.
some of her work in the originals, particularly, not really Vampire Diaries because the show has a completely different tone, I feel like, but in the originals she has a much more dark and dour sort of personality that she's encountering with other people too. It's a much darker atmosphere.
I have faith in you. I don't know who she is, but I'm gonna have to go with Emma just because Scream Queens.
Yeah, no, she's a great choice. I do like her.
Great. None of my actors would have worked that I had selected previously, so they were all older. But hey, what are you gonna do? I had Leo DiCaprio, I had Kate Winslet, Christian Bale, Matt Damon, and Casey Affleck.
Dude, make this movie happen. I'm so on board.
Yeah.
That is going to be a really expensive movie, P.S., because those people command a high salary.
You know what? DiCaprio will take a cut because he wants to get this movie made, because he believes in it, because he will reunite him with Kate Winslet, and once again, he freaking has to die so she can live.
So do you guys remember...
There's irony here somewhere.
In Dunkirk, there was the air pilot whose name was Collins. He had like the blonde hair.
Not really.
He was the most outstanding one aside from what's-his-face? Tom Hardy, but his name is Jack Lowden. You guys should look him up because I think if you saw Dunkirk and you enjoyed it, that you'll know who I'm talking about. But I think he would have been an excellent candidate too for this type of movie. He's still kind of breaking out in his role, but just seeing him in that movie and then seeing clips of him in others, he's really, I think he's going to go some places.
So we're just gonna like throw out all the actors we've ever
why not?
we enjoy. All right.
No, it's the ones that I had picked out.
Well, all right. Now, moving on to nostalgic moments. These are either subtle or direct nods to the original movie that a remake needs. What do you guys think? I want a Lost Boys poster somewhere.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I can sign on for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Anything?
I want
Maybe Natalie needs to wear a trench coat.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. You definitely need the "Today is a great day to die."
There's another line, too, that I really enjoyed, which was, don't die to be a hero, don't die to be a celebrity. I really liked it. I know that there's the "Today is a good day to die" line, which is a good line, but I also really liked that.
It's a great line, and it's perfect. Sets up the whole movie.
But I also really like the "die to be a hero, don't die to be a celebrity." Because that takes up the entire notion of this, of captivates some of the characters who are less fiending for this godlike power of being able to revive themselves. It's don't do this because you have a positive goal that you're trying to seek. Don't do it just because you want the fame of being able to say you came back from the dead. Gotcha. So I really like that line. I would like it to stay.
The only other nod that I really want is the color differential. I really like that. And I don't care how it would be done, whether it means, this is a good vision or a bad vision or what the significance is. But I just love when you have color aesthetic that separates a point of view. I think that's a fascinating filmmaking choice. So I want that.
And Fincher does that really well,
He
especially
sure does.
in House of Cards and in The Social Network. I remember that whole movie was just like in shades of blue and gray. He's really good at that.
He is. Oh, we got a great movie coming. And then the sequel, where finally I get to tell my father-son story. All right. Well, before we get to our final pitch, we've got one more clip from the original Flatliners.
Hey, all right, atropine intratracheal. Come on. That is a truckload, Dave. Come on, this has gotta work. This has gotta work. Come on back, Nelson. Come on back, man. Come on, Nelson. Come on. Come on, Nelson. Come on, Nelson. Come on back. He's been dead 10 minutes. 2 1,000.
Kill him.
3 1,000. No, he's not in VFib. No blood pressure. He's dead.
Epi intracardial.
No, Rachel, no. Just do it. 3 1,000. 4 1,000. It's been 12 minutes. He is dead. 5 1,000. Breathe.
Okay, and now it is time to hear Wayne Henderson, courtesy of MediaVoiceovers.com, take all of that. And Courtney had quite the synopsis. Hopefully you're going to email that to me so I can write this trailer for Wayne and make it a little easier.
So we can all remember it.
So I can remember the highlights of it. But this is Wayne Henderson delivering our movie in movie trailer form. Thank you so much for everything you do, Mr. Wayne Henderson. Take it away, Wayne Henderson, courtesy of MediaVoiceovers.com.
Natalie is odd. A medical school overachiever, she has also just convinced her study group to join her on a little experiment. Natalie believes she can die and comes back to life with the answers to what lies beyond this world. as most of the team takes their turns, returning from death itself, they each begin to realize something more is happening. Visions are becoming hallucinations. Reality is blurring, and long-held secrets will finally reach the surface. If you could die, just for a moment, to see what's on the other side, would you? If your past threatened to unravel and you were faced with your darkest sins, what would you do? Find out next fall as director David Fincher carries you on a journey that will take you to the brink of death. And whether you want to return or not, well, that's up to you. Because this is Flatliners.
All right, good job.
Such a winner. Always gold. He remembered it all.
Wayne is the man. So before we close the show out, we try to share some listener thoughts on the film. We did put this up a little late. Actually, this one and the next one we put up a little late. But hey, what are you going to do? So I've got 2 comments in regards to Flatliners. First comes from Daryl Darnell. Loved this movie when it came out. Maybe my favorite opening line of any movie. Certainly of any movie I can think of off the top of my head. See, Amanda, that means great line.
It was just a star-making line. He needed to, get that camera in close to Kiefer's face so he could just gravel it with that voice of his.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Ugh. And David McGraw says, great movie back in the day. I have a little bit of an interesting story, actually. When I was in the university, Peter Filardi, who wrote the screenplay for Flatliners and later The Craft, his cousin was my classmate. I actually got to see an earlier version of the script before the movie came out. I can't remember all the differences, but I do remember the famous "Today's a Great Day to Die" line wasn't at the beginning of the movie script, and I think another character actually said it later. It was pretty cool to read Peter Filardi's own copy of the screenplay.
That's so cool. That's such a cool memory and story for him.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep, so after I have my assistants type up the whole treatment I've just given for Aaron, I'll have him send it over to Peter Filardi as well.
You should. Actually, you should, and you should pitch it to him. He's like, I'll get that movie made. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Remake This Movie Right. I do want to mention once again, Wayne Henderson, courtesy of MediaVoiceovers.com. He's got a lot of other podcasts, so please find those in the show notes. They're all linked there. You guys, anything you want to mention before we head out of here? Amanda, Courtney?
We'll definitely check out The Hollywood Outsider, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that we were on a recent episode.
288.
Yeah, there you go. Plug that number.
Yes, it's late as night.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
So check that out.
And check out their previous episodes. So be sure to do that. Splash, 9 to 5.
The Birds, Buffy.
Wild Wild West.
Wild Wild West. Wicca Wicca.
Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary.
That's featured in AV Club.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There you go. And you can find me in Remake This Movie Right. You can find me on Blacklist Exposed right now if you're a Blacklist fan. Beyond Westworld. When that comes back, I'm all over the place. I got to stop podcasting and take a nap.
Because you're an Academy Award winning.
I am Academy Award winning podcaster, just in case you didn't know.
So fancy.
Yep. Subscribe and review us via Apple Podcasts. I cannot tell you guys how important it is to the show for people to find it, because it is very hard to find podcasts these days. There are so damn many of them. So if you could leave a review, every review helps people find the show.
Review!
There you go.
Appreciate it.
Apple, Stitcher, your podcast app of choice, whatever it is you use. And if you have thoughts on this pitch, or you have suggestions, or just want to kind of throw some words our way for something you didn't like, RemakeThisMovieRight@gmail.com. It's RemakeThisMovieRight@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter @RemakeRight. We're available at RemakeThisMovieRight.com. And please share the show on whatever social media outlet you use. Facebook, Reddit, whatever. And be sure to subscribe because you don't want to miss the next one, which is going to be the 80s classic, Heathers. Or should I say, Heathers. Thanks again, Courtney and Amanda, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us on.
All right. Well, the credits have rolled on this remake, but be sure to come back for our next one. Remember that every film you love will get a reboot someday, and only you can remake that movie right. Today is a good day to nap.